Hello. So today I've got Steve Burgess here, who's a specialist hypnotherapist and regression therapist. So Steve, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, Marcia. Okay, I've been a hypnotherapist since 1992, which is over 27 years now. Long time. I've completed over 15,000 therapy sessions in that time. Who is regression based. I'm also use lots of NLP, EFT, etc., etc. But the main love of my life, if you like, in therapy is regression therapy, because I find it so effective and so powerful. I've written 2 books on the subject. The first one was published some years ago, Famous Past Lives.
Reading that one now, finding it fascinating.
Now, okay. And this one is due to be published next March. I've now got advanced copies of it, The Power of Past Life Regression. So,
brilliant.
I sort of live past. Well, I live regression really. It's just something that I've found is so effective and so fascinating. So yeah.
I think you're the most well-known person for past life and regression in the UK, I would say.
I think so. And now, of course, I live in Norway now, so I like to think I'm pretty well known in Norway as well.
Norway as well.
Fingers crossed.
Brilliant. So I have some questions for you that people might like to hear. So one of the questions, why would you use regression in therapy?
Okay. The concept of regression is that we're working on the causes of a problem, what I always call the emotional or energetic root causes of a problem. And so when a client comes with an issue, a problem, whatever it is, whether it's depression or a lack of confidence or a phobia or a physical illness, you know, we don't catch these things. Every problem we have in the regression model comes from locked in feelings and emotions from the past. And these are what we call traumas in this life or past lives or even our ancestors' lives. Okay. So when we're working in regression, the aim of it is it's like the problem or the issue is like a weed. It's sort of stuck down. And a lot of therapy just cuts the weed off, but then of course it can keep growing, or it comes out in another way. Whereas what regression therapy is about is digging the weed out, it's taking the roots out, and then the problem just goes, it never comes back.
Got a little bit.
Oh, hello.
I didn't even know he was in here. Sorry, that's really put you off now, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's fantastic. We occasionally have people in past lives who regress back into past lives, by the way, as animals.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that.
It doesn't happen very often. It is very rare, but it does sometimes happen. So who knows, your cat may have been
coming to say hello from a past life.
So yeah, so the reason we do regression is to go into the emotional roots of the problem and dig the roots out and release the problem at a very, very deep level. And at the risk of, I try not to offend people. I try not to be too dogmatic about things because you know, life, there's a lot of grey areas in life. What I will say is that I began as a hypnotherapist using nothing other than suggestions, post-hypnotic regression therapy and visualizations. And I've found that after 6 months, it just wasn't deep enough. It just wasn't getting the results that I want. And so at the risk of offending hypnotherapists who have trained in that and think that's the be-all and end-all of therapy, it really isn't. Once I've retrained and then started to work with the client's inner process, I found that this is what I call real therapy. Yeah. Okay. And many hypnotherapists over the years have been on the hypnotherapy training course, and they've often said at the end of it, I now feel like a proper therapist. So
it goes much more in depth.
Much more in depth. I still say it's, you know, after 27 years, it's the deepest form of therapy I know.
And I've found that when I've done regression, it does go deeper than anything else.
It really does, and it's fast. I mean, you know, people can be going for therapy for years, as you know, in traditional therapy. And hypnotherapy generally is a radical therapy and is relatively fast, but regression therapy also can be very fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I had a client over here in Trondheim last week with eye pain in her right eye. And after one regression session, well, we regressed back into one of her ancestors' lives.
Right. Okay.
To release the trauma of having their eyes burnt out in a life many generations ago. Her eye pain after just one session was 90% improved.
Oh, it's amazing.
So it's deep stuff.
So that kind of leads me on to this next question, really. So how does regression into a past life help with problems in this present life? You've kind of just answered that, haven't you?
Yeah, well, all the problems we have, the regression model, all of our issues are caused by locked in feelings, emotions from the past. And it doesn't matter where that the trauma has taken place, which has locked the feelings in, whether that's this lifetime, because it's very often childhood. You do a lot of childhood regression, of course, back into childhood events. It can be past lifetimes, it can be our ancestors' lives. But the subconscious differentiates, and the technique and the system that I teach on the course is a system where the subconscious guides us. It tells us where we need to go. So we don't know as therapists, and I do get a bit angry with therapists who are full of ego and they know better than the client.
Yeah.
They know better than the subconscious. And as you know, Erickson said, let the client do the work. The client's subconscious knows best.
Exactly.
And this system that I teach is a system where the subconscious guides us. It takes us where we need to go. Even if it says past life, even if the client doesn't believe in past lives, even if the therapist doesn't believe in past lives, the subconscious says this is past life, and it takes the client into the past life to relieve the problem. So it doesn't matter where the problem is. I'm not sure if that's exactly answered your question, but you know, it's somewhere in the past, wherever we go to release the problem.
Yeah, so it released the problem that's in the current life by going back to past lives.
Past lives.
Yeah.
So, for example, somebody with a phobia, flying phobia is a classic past life problems. I estimate overall about 60% of phobias are caused by problems in past lives, by traumas in past lives.
Okay, that's interesting.
But flying phobia is a classic. You know, I've had people who a woman comes with a flying phobia. She's getting more and more terrified with every flight, and her subconscious takes her into a past life where she was a woman in the Second World War, whose husband was a fighter pilot or an Air Force pilot, who flies off on a mission and he doesn't come back. And so she just in the chair, she sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. She was in trance. She saw that happening. She saw her husband fly away. She says he doesn't come back. And she just was sobbing and crying and sobbing and crying for 10, 15 minutes.
Wow.
That released the problem. She was no longer frightened of flying anymore. Because her subconscious, he was saying flying equals death. Flying equals pain and death because of what happened in the past life. And the subconscious, as we know, can be very literal, although it has an amazing wisdom as well.
Yeah.
So any problem can come from those traumas in the past.
So are they real? Are past lives real?
That's a great question. Having done so many thousands of past lives, I would say yes, without a shadow of a doubt. Having said that, there are some occasions when a person is in a past life and it may be they are imagining it. It may be.
I've always wondered sometimes if it's like a metaphor for making a change.
And this is, there are some therapists, some people who say that all past life sessions, the client's subconscious is creating a metaphor. I completely disagree. You know, there may be some past life sessions where that happens, but the thing is, in therapy, we don't tend to look for the proof or the disproof. So what do I mean by that? We're not looking for the person's name in the past life and where they lived and the inside leg measurement or whatever. What we want is to release the trauma, release the emotion. So in a way, it doesn't matter whether it's real or imagined in that respect. But in most therapy sessions, the client gets better. So they just say, I know it was real. I know it was real. I don't have to prove it to anybody. There are a few occasions where clients will get verifiable information, which they can then go away and verify after the session.
Mm-hmm.
And that proves that it's real. And of course, there are many of these being written down over the years in books and articles. And really, when you look at those, I would say it's pretty near proof that those are past lives,
Mm-hmm.
because of that verifiable information.
I noticed in your book that there were so many facts.
That's
one of the regressions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly with the lady who regressed back to be Queen Mary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I really had to go through history books I was scurrying through history books and found so much of that specific information that she came out with. There is no way on earth she would have known.
Mm.
She was a housewife, and she relived the past life as one of England's queens. And the specific details, well, I just had to find in history books. She would never have known that if it wasn't past life.
Yeah.
But the ultimate thing is, it doesn't matter. Clients get better.
Yeah. And that's the ultimate goal.
That's the ultimate thing, yeah. Yeah.
So is it dangerous to take clients into emotional traumas? Can it make the issue worse at times?
Yeah, sometimes this is a question that a lot of therapists worry about, because they think, well, the client's going to cry or scream, and we do see some big emotional outbursts in regression.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally, I mean, clients sometimes will be screaming and yelling and writhing as they're releasing the trauma. And of course, this is, for most therapists, terrifying, because most therapists are used to sitting there with a script, reading the script at this dead body that's laying there, taking it all in. And when the client starts to go into this stuff, most therapists get very scared. But as long as you don't panic, as long as you sit there and are very calm and you allow that release to take place, then what happens is the emotional release releases the problem and the client gets better.
Mm-hmm.
Now, okay, there are some occasions where we shouldn't regress, and I do cover this in the course. I do look at when we don't regress, because it's not always safe.
Mm-hmm.
But I would suggest in about 98% of cases, it is perfectly safe to use regression, maybe 99% of cases.
Mm-hmm.
But the therapist has to be calm. It takes quite a lot of courage to do regression work.
Mm-hmm.
It's very exciting. It's extremely exciting. But it also takes courage, and the therapist has to be calm and allow the emotion release to take place. And as long as that emotion is released, the client will get better. What sometimes happens is that the therapist gets frightened. I've heard this many times. The therapist has brought the client out of trance because the client looked like they were getting very distressed. That has made the client worse.
Yeah.
The therapist has not allowed the release to take place. They've blocked it. The client comes up with the emotional stuff up here, and then it's there. It's not released.
Yeah.
So as long as the therapist goes through the process and goes through the system that I teach, clients will get better. It is perfectly safe.
Good. And in the course, because you're coming over, aren't you, to the UK next March? To run your course. So do you cover regression in this lifetime on the course as well as past lives?
Yeah, so we look at this life and past life on this particular course.
Mm-hmm.
I also do run an advanced regression course where we look at ancestral regression, which is through into our ancestors' lives. But on this course, it's past life and this lifetime. So we look at working in the 5 areas of this life in regression, which are adult life, adolescence, childhood, birth, and the time in the womb before birth.
Yeah.
Work in a system which the subconscious tells us where we need to go to.
Mm-hmm.
So the client will come with the problem, with the issue, and we ask the subconscious, what is the cause of this? Is it in this life? Is it in past life? It may be both. Whereabouts in this life, and how many past lives? Because sometimes it's more than one past life.
Mm-hmm.
It could be 2, 3, it can be 7 past lives occasionally. So we get a very detailed and specific regression process. And what I teach is this structure,
mm-hmm.
that you can be very loose around the structure, but once you've got the structure, once you've got the system, then you just work every session the same, and the client can be loose within that structure.
Okay. So what's different about the regression that you teach?
I think because of the detail,
Mm-hmm.
because of this specificness, this structure. I know there are therapists who do past life from a new age perspective.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be drumming in the background or Tibetan singing bowls and stuff.
Right.
And, you know, it's all unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
I say, look, I am a new agey person, of course. You know, I used to be a Buddhist. I've trained in shamanism. So I've got that sort of background. But for me, this is a credible psychotherapeutic discipline, and it should be viewed as such.
Mm-hmm.
So this structure that I teach is very, very detailed. I find that there are people doing past life. So, I mean, it still astonishes me. There are some people who are allegedly run past life training courses which last for one day.
Mm-hmm.
That's ridiculous. You can't learn regression in one day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we teach it in 4 days. I could do it over 2 weeks and there could
Mm-hmm.
still be more information coming through. So what I think the difference between my regression training and others is that mine is a psychotherapeutic structure,
Okay.
which fits. And anybody, I mean, having said that, people who are not hypnotherapists can come on the course.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions.
Okay, right. So
it can be standalone as well.
Okay, I've regularly had people who are Reiki practitioners, for example. I've had psychologists and psychiatrists and doctors who have learned this. So basically any therapist who, you could say, has their client in trance
Mm-hmm.
can use this system. Because, you know, Reiki, healers, people are in trance.
Yeah.
So when people are having psychotherapy, they're in trance.
Mm-hmm.
All we're doing with this is we're using a hypnotic trance and then using the ideomotor response to let the subconscious do the work. But people who are not hypnotherapists can come on the course. I tend to say they tend to get about 80% of the course,
Mm-hmm.
whereas hypnotherapists get 100% because obviously I'm talking in hypnotic language patterns all the time, and terminology. But that 80% is still enough for a Reiki practitioner, for example, to learn how to do this properly and to do it well.
Good. And what sort of issues can be helped with regression?
Anything. Absolutely any issue that a client brings into our consulting room comes from somewhere and can be worked in regression. And you name it, food problems, overweight, phobias, addictions, smoking, phobias, depression, lack of confidence, skin problems, physical problems, even cancer. You know, every physical problem has got emotional causes. And anybody who's read Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life, will know how important it is to work on the emotional causes of physical problems. So basically any problem that a person brings into the consulting room, and even children, regression with children can be very successful.
Sounds good. So can you tell me a bit more about how the training's structured? Because it's over 4 days, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I've not one of these trainers who just stands at the front and expects you to listen to me for 4 days. There's nothing worse. Awful. So yes, there's some theory. And actually on the first day, there's quite a lot of theory because I really just want to get everybody into the concept of regression and the background to it. But the style is that usually I'll demonstrate something with a member of the group, and then with the scripts that are as part of the course, people then pair off and work in twos, you know, with each other. And we build the course bit by bit. We don't just jump into trauma release on the first day. It's piece by piece, so everybody's got the system over time. And what we do look at as well, which is a great, money spinner for hypnotherapists, is I teach what to do on a past life regression workshop, a group workshop.
Okay.
I give you a great script for working in groups as past life regression group workshops, which is a brilliant way to build your therapy practice because the publicity you get from doing that is awesome. The press is fascinated with this stuff.
People will be fascinated, definitely.
So yeah, so we go from right from basic stuff through to the advanced stuff on the 4th day, and the aim is that at the end of the 4th day, by the end of the Sunday, everyone on the course will be able to work the system, to use the system, to take people into trance, to take them back into the past and release the traumas. Okay, there's other aspects as well which I teach. It isn't always about trauma release. There are other aspects of regression which we look at as well. But we add all that in, so you get a full package. I know there are some therapists who are relatively new to therapy who get a little bit worried because, you know, they think when we do regression, maybe they're not in control, or it's very deep, or clients are crying. This really is just part of the process. And well, learning this stuff is like learning to drive a car. You know, when you first go for your first driving lesson, you don't know where to put the key.
Yeah.
Eventually, with more and more practice and more teachings, you drive without even thinking about it. So this is just exactly the same. It is a skill that's taught, like, as you know, Marcia, being a hypnotherapist is a skill, just like learning to drive a car.
Yeah.
You know, people who are a little bit nervous about it, and you know, I've been running this course for, gosh, 20 years now, I think. Nervous at the start, usually come away fascinated and excited that this tool that they now have is the tool maybe they've been looking for, which will, you know, give them so much more success as therapists. And that's the aim of it. Get people better.
Great.
And we have a lot of fun along the way as well.
Oh, that always helps with the learning, doesn't it?
My teaching style is with a lot of fun.
Sounds good. Okay, thanks, Steve. So I'll put at the end of the video details in case people have got any questions.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
Is that all right if they contact you? If
Absolutely. Yeah, not a problem. Yeah,
brilliant. Okay, thank you.